While most presidents wore suit jackets, ties, and dress pants all the time, you don't have to any longer. Because Presidents Unplugged has merch. If you want to check out some new shirts to buy as a nice gift for somebody in your family or just something that you want yourself, go to presidentsunpluggedmerch.com to check out new shirts, hoodies, crew necks, and anything else that you can dream of. Now in many more colors and new designs coming soon. I'm very excited for the President's Unplugged merch store to finally be open. Now, let's get back to the show. On September 6th, 1901, while attending the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York, William McKinley, our 25th American president, greeted a long line of citizens attending the event. He shook hands very quickly. He was known to be able to shake hundreds of hands an hour, which is a pretty good skill to learn if you're a politician. Shaking all these people's hands, did he remember every person? Probably not. They all look normal, including one man with a wrapped up, probably injured hand walking up to shake his. Little did McKinley know that under that wrapped hand was not an injury, but a loaded gun that would soon lead to his death way too soon. Welcome back to week 3 of the spooky month of presidential assassinations. Today, we're diving into the life, legacy, and assassination of William McKinley, the 25th American president. A man whose leadership helped transform America into the world power we know it as today, and whose tragic death reshaped the entire American presidency itself. Let's do this. William McKinley was born on January 29, 1843, and as a fellow January birthday, I respect him. He was born into a family who was modest, who lived in a free state before the Civil War. And William McKinley's family really did shape what he believed. McKinley saw slavery as downright evil. And when the Civil War broke out, he enlisted as a private in the Ohio Regiment under the future President Rutherford B. Hayes. He showed incredible bravery at the Battle of Antietam, and as a person who's been to the Battle of Antietam, the battleground itself, it was one of the bloodiest days in American history, and McKinley's courage through even a day like that shows his true resilience, especially in wartime. His resilience and his courage earned him a promotion. By the end of the war, he was a major, known for his courage and composure under the severe pressure of the Civil War. After that war ended and the Union won, abolishing slavery, McKinley studied law. And he studied and had a small practice in Ohio, and he soon met Ida Saxton, the love of his life. And just a few years later, in 1871, they got married. But tragedy struck the McKinleys very early in their marriage. Both of their young daughters died extremely early in their life. While McKinley grieved, Ida fell into a deep depression and almost an illness that lasted for the rest of her life. But McKinley was very strong through it all. He stayed faithfully by his wife's side, and he was a loyal husband whose patience and care honestly turned into one of his most defining traits. Even though his wife was pretty unstable with all that had happened, he still stayed by her side through anything. After this tragedy, McKinley turned to politics. McKinley served in the U.S. House of Representatives from 1877 to 1891. He became a leading voice in the House of Representatives on tariffs and trade, and he later served as the governor of Ohio from 1892 to 1896. During this time, the U.S. was hit by the Panic of 1893, a throwback to the Grover Cleveland episode, Non-Consecutive Difficulties. This was an economic collapse. It devastated the economy. Whether we were talking about industries and jobs, they were all failing. And seeing an opportunity amid the crisis, McKinley ran for president in 1896 against William Jennings Bryan, who at the time was not liked because he was a Democratic candidate. And don't worry, William Jennings Bryan will come back soon. But just know that after what Grover Cleveland had done, the Democratic Party was not looking very good to the country. McKinley promoted economic stability in his campaign. And McKinley didn't just speak to a couple of people about this campaign. McKinley ran one of the biggest campaigns America had ever seen. He spoke to so many crowds, and it worked wonders. McKinley had the first ever pretty much 100 electoral vote win since the Civil War. He won 271 to 176 in the Electoral College, and he restored Republican control, and it was stronger than ever. While George Washington himself might not have had an Instagram page, Presidents Unplugged does. If you want to see some presidential content and overall updates on the show, come to the Instagram at presidents_unplugged. See you there. Once McKinley came into office, he pushed for extremely high tariffs. He knew that tariffs would eventually lift the country back to prosperity after what Cleveland had done to collapse the economy. And during this time, the economy was booming, and McKinley had something that was really on his mind: foreign affairs. Under McKinley, America fought and won the Spanish-American War. In 1898, he defeated Spain and acquired territories like Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. And these victories, these collections of land, made America a global power. That victory, however, led to the Philippine-American War, which was a very difficult war for McKinley to fight. He, throughout this war, killed almost 200,000 Filipinos to win. The Philippines were not a very strong nation, so in some ways this felt very unnecessary, but while it's one of the most shameful pieces of his presidential term, it did end in us conquering and gaining the Philippines as a part of our land, but it is really a scar of America when looking back at our history. And during McKinley's term, he actually did something that I believe today was a great thing. He expanded executive authority. In the United States, we have three branches of government: the executive, the judicial, and the legislative. To create a balanced nation that keeps each other accountable, we try to keep these three branches of government pretty equal in power. The judicial deals with what they need to, the legislative deals with what they need to, and the executive deals with what they need to, but not really encroaching on each other to keep it at peace. McKinley did not see that in the executive branch. He thought the legislative and judicial were gaining a little too much power. So McKinley believed the president should have greater influence in shaping national policies, and he made that very clear. And McKinley, to this day, can be thanked for giving more position and more power to the presidency itself. And so ends McKinley's first presidential term. He did some great things, he did some bad things. But now it's time for re-election. But wait, where's McKinley's vice president? Garrett Hobart, which was McKinley's original vice president, passed away around the end of his first term. So McKinley needed another choice for vice president. So he chose Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th President of the United States, but we're not there yet. When McKinley picked Teddy Roosevelt, he actually was pretty scared. Teddy Roosevelt was a new person, and McKinley had made some bad decisions, so he might not win his re-election bid. So who are the Democrats going to choose? William Jennings Bryan? Wait, didn't they just put this guy up and he did terrible? Yeah, the Democratic Party did not make a good decision when they gave William Jennings Bryan another shot. Because if you don't remember, we were not happy with the Democratic Party, and you giving the same dog water candidate from the last time does not make it any better. So McKinley won again. But 10 minutes through this episode, we're actually going to get into the spooky assassination section, okay? His second term was cut way too short. On September 6th, 1901, at that Pan American Exposition, McKinley was showing off the social aspect of the presidency. He was shaking a bunch of hands of all these people in line going inside of the convention. It was great. It was fun. He shook hundreds and hundreds of hands. It was great. Until one man came up to him, and I'm going to try. Leon Czolgosz, that is Czolgosz. Thanks, Google Translate, for helping me say that. Leon Czolgosz walked up to him with a wrapped-up hand. But as you heard earlier, this was not an injury. This was a loaded gun. Czolgosz pulls that gun out and shoots 2 bullets at William McKinley. Luckily, one of the bullets bounced off a button on his suit jacket, really stopping it from doing any severe damage. But the other bullet, the one that was actually never found, even in his autopsy, the one that did severe damage, hit him right in the abdomen. Unlike Lincoln or Kennedy, as we'll talk about in the future, McKinley was not shot in the head. He was still very conscious as this was all happening. And the first thing he said when he was on the ground, shot, was, "Go easy on him, boys," referring to the person who had just shot him. That comment really showed off McKinley's true character. Even the guy who had just shot him twice, McKinley still cared about him. McKinley still didn't want the crowd to absolutely destroy him because he had just shot the president. McKinley's comment is still a tell for us today of what a great man he truly was. And after all of this unfurled, he was taken to an emergency surgery. And at first, similar to Garfield, he looked like he was recovering. But this is very eerily similar to Garfield. It was only 20 years later. It was still before antibiotics or true sterilization. And very quickly, infection set in. Gangrene spread throughout his body. I have a very personal connection to gangrene because it is the word that got me out in the 8th grade spelling bee. So it will therefore traumatize me for the rest of my life. That is Gangrene. Story aside, gangrene is pretty much a disease where once parts of your body that have been injured can't continue to have blood flow, they slowly die, meaning your body starts to pretty much rot. It's absolutely disgusting. And it was a very vile way that McKinley had to die, and something I wouldn't wish on anybody. 8 days after gangrene set in, on September 14th, 1901, McKinley died at just 58 years old. His death really set America in a different direction. After Garfield had been shot and killed exactly 20 years before McKinley had, we were still kind of recuperating what just happened. Garfield's assassination almost seemed like just another effect of the post-Civil War times. But after McKinley was killed, we realized that political assassination is a real issue, and it needs to be avoided at all costs. Even though that sounds simple for us today, back then they didn't see that pattern. They didn't have the technology and the books that we have today to look at American history as a timeline and see that Lincoln, who we're talking about next week, Garfield, and McKinley's assassination were 36 years apart. Only 36 years! We can't just think of that as 36 random years in American history. We have to see that as somebody's life. Somebody who was living there during that time. During their lifetime, they would see 3 American presidents shot and killed because of assassinations. Political assassination is a problem. And I really think the country, sure, they knew that Lincoln and Garfield were shot and killed. They saw that. But some people still thought that was an effect from the Civil War. McKinley's was not. McKinley was just a wake-up call that if we don't put our foot down as the American people and stop this, nothing will ever change. And especially during the spooky month of presidential assassinations, I realized something. Without the American people putting Secret Service on our future presidents, after McKinley, Theodore Roosevelt had Secret Service with him pretty much all the time, 24/7. Without McKinley being an example of what can go wrong with America, it might have never been fixed. And we might have had many more politicians lost in the future. And that's truly, especially during this month of talking about all these presidential assassinations, that is what makes McKinley's legacy so important. Tune in next Friday as we talk about the man in the theater. I'm talking about the man in the theater. Ooh, ooh. That one that you definitely remember from school. President Lincoln is sitting in that theater when out of nowhere John Wilkes Booth comes and shoots him in the back of the head. Wait, why did John Wilkes Booth do this? And what happened afterwards? Learn about that and much more next week on week 4 of the spooky month of presidential assassinations, coming very soon. I'm Ty Svensson, and I'll see you soon. God bless. We need to make an executive decision now. The executive decision to follow Presidents Unplugged on Apple Podcasts or Spotify today to be notified weekly that your favorite presidential podcast has released new content. Now, let's get back to the show.